Before we get into today's breakdown, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what you want next. Full camp reports, tactical previews, or financial deep dive into pay-per-view boxing and crossover fights. If you value clear source coverage of the sport, minus the noise, tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next report on Gervonta Davis versus Jake Paul, Floyd Mayweather's reaction, and the wider debate about boxing's future. Floyd Mayweather has seen nearly everything boxing can produce, but even he was caught off guard when images leaked of a dramatically bulked up Gervonta Tank Davis ahead of his exhibition against Jake Paul on November 14th in Miami. The former 5-division champion, who mentored Davis for years under Mayweather Promotions, was candid about his surprise. He sees the added muscle as either a potential game changer or a possible liability. On the one hand, a denser, stronger Tank could bring his knockout power with him up the scale. On the other, the same mass could tax his greatest advantages: speed, snap, and late-round stamina. As Mayweather put it in his own way, boxing is always more than muscles. Skills, ring IQ, timing, and defense decide more fights than biceps ever will. That tension between the optics of size and the reality of skill is at the center of this event. Davis built his legend at the lighter weights, engineering knockouts at 130, 135, and 140 pounds with a compact frame and surgical power. Jake Paul has fought almost exclusively in the cruiserweight neighborhood, walking into rings at 190 to 195 pounds with a clear edge in height and reach. In Miami, the television cameras are going to make that difference look even bigger than it is. The question is whether it will matter once the bell rings and the smaller man starts finding targets. Training footage shows Paul drilling downhill shots to adjust his leverage against a shorter opponent. In interviews, he joked about practicing punches below my knees, a line that sounds light, but reveals he understands the geometry is different when you're the taller man. He has height, reach, and natural mass on his side. Davis has the rest, economy of movement, a world-class chin at his fighting weights, and the kind of compact power that only seasoned boxers possess. It's a true crossover fight, not simply because one man is an influencer who became a pro and the other is a world champion. It's a crossover because it tests what happens when marketing gravity meets elite mechanics in the same ring. Behind the theatrics of the press tour, those inside Davis's camp say this is not a sparring assignment wrapped in a payday. Observers who've been around Tank's training described a fighter who looks switched on, composed in front of microphones, fully alert in body language, and stubbornly focused on controlling the narrative rather than being consumed by it. For Davis, exhibition doesn't mean casual. It means he'll be paid to show more people why he has been one of the most feared punchers of his generation. The upside is obvious. A mainstream spotlight that no sanctioned defense could deliver, a chance to expand his audience beyond hardcore boxing fans, and a tidy bridge over promotional politics that stall the fights everyone asks about. The risk is equally clear. If the night goes wrong in any way, injury, optics, or a flash moment that looks bad in a loop, he gives his critics a highlight. It's money and messaging, and Tank appears intent on leaving with both. The press events added accelerant to a matchup already burning hot. Exchanges went from slick to sour in a flash, with one exchange in particular going viral, as Davis warned that if anything happens, consequences would follow. It was performative in part, but not entirely. Paul will play the showman. Davis will play himself. Quiet until he isn't, respectful of the money and the risk, unwilling to indulge in slapstick that compromises the fight. Veteran analysts who watched the presser saw something more important than the quotes. They saw a smaller man who didn't look threatened. Gervonta may be out of his element in terms of scale and spectacle. He did not look out of his depth. Mayweather, who helped steer Davis's early career, has always been careful to insist that Tank is more than a puncher. He has called him one of the hardest hitters pound for pound, but then added the crucial qualifier: power without nuance gets you beat. Timing, defense, feet, and decisions, that's what separates champions from wrecking balls. Floyd has also complained that Davis doesn't get full pound-for-pound credit because he was affiliated with me. That is a particular kind of lament coming from the most polarizing businessman the sport has produced. Students of the game remember the mentor and the protege as close once, then strained. By 2022, Davis had left Mayweather Promotions, complaining that his mentor was too controlling, limiting his earnings, putting roadblocks in front of fights he wanted, and making sure no one outshone him under the same roof. The breakup became part business, part personal. Davis has talked about feeling put in lose-lose positions. He said Floyd didn't genuinely celebrate another fighter's rise. The footage backs that sense of egocentrism. A perfectly normal interview became a Mayweather monologue on why he is not just one of the greatest, but the greatest, citing world champions beaten, gates, purses, and punch accuracy, and then swatting away a reporter with a line that's pure Floyd. Your job don't pay like my job. He has earned the right to boast. He also earned the reputation that makes fighters like Davis eventually look for their own lane. Bernard Hopkins, sometimes a lightning rod himself, read the dynamic bluntly. In his view, Mayweather's influence limited Tank more than it liberated him. The opportunity for Davis to make certain fights was thwarted by a long personal feud between Floyd and rival promoter Oscar De La Hoya. Hopkins argued Tank had to break free of those chains, respect what Floyd did for him, and then chart his own course. The implied lesson, respect your mentor without living in his shadow, is one many greats have had to learn. Roy Jones Jr. took a longer view. He's not surprised by Davis's decision to fight Jake Paul. It's a fast-lane version of what Mayweather did by bending the sport to his own economics. He suggested, you take a calculated risk. You get the bag. You raise your profile for the next run of fights. In an era when best versus best can be made on schedule because of networks, promoters, and politics, you do something else. Jones didn't endorse the matchup as a pure contest. He did understand its motivations, the blend of business and ambition. He acknowledged that today's fighters have been taught to go for the bag. In his day, fighters were punished by the press if they didn't chase the best available opponent. Now the market rewards a well-executed plan. Trainer Greg Hackett gave voice to a different frustration. The culture of backlash that has attached itself to every move top fighters make. In his view, fans and content creators who have never walked into a ring twist every decision into a referendum on courage or legacy. He believes Davis owes certain fights for the game. He named Shakur Stevenson as one and a rematch with Lamont Roach Jr. as another, but ultimately says the fighter's choices are his. If Tank stands on his decision not to fight Shakur right now, Hackett called it corny, but said he won't rant about it. People on the outside don't know the personal realities inside. They judge from clips, not from camps. They don't see how much a modern fighter's energy is swallowed by marketing, lawyers, and business. Layers amateurs never imagine. Paulie Malignaggi is not buying any of the romance around exhibitions. He has been consistent in his criticism. In his view, events like this undermine boxing's authenticity by confusing casual fans into thinking they're watching legitimate competitions with stakes beyond money and metrics. When knockouts happen in these mismatches, they don't mean what knockout should mean, he argues. He and Chris Algieri went further in conversation, drawing lines from this bout to broader issues. Manufactured records, curated opposition, the drift away from belts as drivers of matchmaking. He invoked a named fighter's fear in rhetorical cross-examination. Felix Tito, Trinidad. The Puerto Rican legend knocked out elite opponents in their prime, Malignaggi said. If you're a real knockout artist, prove it against the best of the best. Commentator Showbiz the Adult started this cycle leaning toward a Jake Paul knockout. The press conference turned him around. He saw in Davis a professionalism that read as calm rather than casual. He will not say the fight is fake or paid off. He is not worried about Tank lacking temperament. If anything, he thinks Davis looks unthreatened and slightly out of preferred element. Two ingredients that produce sharpness. The proof will be in the first minutes. If Tank's timing carries up with the added weight, and if he can get under Jake's longer shots without eating a blind uppercut, a miniature masterpiece is possible. Eddie Hearn, never shy with an opinion, points at what he considers a dodge. In his framing, Davis is choosing a less risky, more lucrative route when there were fights on the table that would have tested him in ways that matter more to the game. He suggests the New York State Athletic Commission could have ordered a rematch with Lamont Roach Jr. He says the only fight after that truly made sense was Shakur Stevenson, a technical chess match that would enthrall purists and settle conversations on Twitter for months. In Hearn's view, Shakur beats Tank. He cites Shocker's precision, patience, and ring IQ as decisive. If Davis really wants to be measured next to the era's best, Hearn believed the path is obvious. He also concedes that the Jake Paul bout will do numbers at the gate and on pay-per-view. Controversy sells, and this event is nothing if not controversial. Finally, Timothy Bradley, speaking with a straight talk that made him a must-listen analyst, called this fight easy money for Davis. He sees the skill gap as too wide for size to fill. Jake Paul has power and enthusiasm. He has improved fundamentals. He has a puncher's chance. He does not have the depth required to control a fight with Gervonta Davis. Bradley thinks Tank's timing, defense, and counterpunching will show quickly. The only mistake Davis can make is believing his own hype, underestimating a bigger man, and put himself in a spot where a shot he would never get caught with at 135 lands differently at 190. That's boxing 101, he said. Don't pick on small folks, he added with a grin. But his point was a reverse. Paul is picking on a smaller man. Size matters. It's not everything. This is where tactics return to the forefront. How does a fighter built for lightweight defeat a man who outweighs him by 50 pounds and sees over the top of his guard? The answer is the same answer that has governed boxing for a century. Speed and position. Davis must get him reacting. Upstairs to downstairs, then back up. Feign high to drag the guard, then put the left hand in the solar plexus. Touch on the way out to keep the taller man honest. Never follow, always cut. Steer him into the uppercut you want him to throw, and make him pay for it. The added muscle mass on Tank's frame will help if he needs to freeze Paul in close. It will hurt if it slows his exits on defense. He must not admire his work or fall asleep under the longer clinches a novice uses to buy time. For Paul, the instructions are simple and brutal. Use the jab like a shepherd's staff and never let him inside without payment. If Davis gets under you, don't reach. Frame him and spin. Tie him up and make it ugly. Make the smaller man carry you for as long as he can handle it and see what's left in minute 9. Beyond the ropes, the business realities are unavoidable. Whether you call it a circus or a smart plan, this is what pay-per-view boxing is in 2025. A mix of sanctioned fights that can be made because of back-end politics and spectacle bouts that can because money finds its level. It is no accident that respected figures like Roy Jones Jr. talk about going for the bag, where once they would have talked about going for glory. Promoters, networks, and streaming platforms have taught fans and fighters alike that the biggest rewards sometimes live outside the rankings. Floyd Mayweather wrote the modern playbook for that. Plenty have followed. The fight does raise questions about legacy. If Davis splatters Paul, the purest response will be predictable. He beat a novice. If he looks ordinary, the backlash will be loud. If he gets clipped and the evening goes sideways, the noise will be deafening. At the same time, the financial upside can't be denied. A reported 8-figure purse for a night's work buys freedom. Freedom to pursue different fights, to fund your own promotions, to resist short money offers dressed up as fights for the culture. Whether fans like it or not, that calculus shapes careers. So what should the sport want from November 14th? It should want a clean exhibition. No rabbit punches, no roughhouse accidents. A good referee who doesn't let inexperience create hazards. It should want to showcase the difference between a man who started boxing as a teenager under a boxing system and a man who started it as a brand and then learned to fight. It should want to remind casual viewers that boxing's best nights happen when skill outruns size and when a small fighter shows you just how big a sport can be.